Hi, everyone. Mondays in my second grade class were exciting days. You see, on Mondays, our teacher, Mrs. Saltzman, would begin the day with current events. Each week, certain students were supposed to bring in news articles and learn to break them down by what Mrs. Saltzman called the five W's. As the reporter reported the news to the class, someone in the press pool, the rest of the class, would ask one of the important questions of who and what and where and when and why, and sometimes how, but that wasn't a W question. And together we would manage to get the story and write it in our current event notebooks. Somehow these press conferences were supposed to show us how to understand the world and why things that happen in it happen. Often, especially after someone reported on a bad news story, someone in the class would ask about a particular perpetrator of crime. How could one person do that? And Mrs. Saltzman would sometimes remind us that history repeatedly shows us that one person did not. Take the episode at the end of this week's Parsha, for example. After giving us the rules for Kedushas Kahuna, for the sanctity that the Kohanim are expected to maintain, and the rules of Kedushas Hazmanim, the sanctity of the special times of the Moadim, the Torah tells us this really sad story about a person who lost his cool and cursed Hashem. Ultimately, that loss of cool cost him his life. Now, the Torah could have chosen to simply tell us about the laws about not cursing Hashem and the punishment for one who does. But the Torah doesn't do that. Instead, the Torah gives us a somewhat elongated storyline to get to the point. Indeed, we read, "Vayitze ben isha Yisraelis v'hu ben ish Mitzri b'soch b'nei Yisrael vayinatzu b'machaneh ben ha-Yisraelis v'ish ha-Yisraeli." The son of an Israelite woman and an Egyptian man left. Rashi explains he left the court, having argued that he should be considered a Yisraeli, and the son of an Israelite woman and the Israelite man quarreled within the camp. And you know what happened next. The son of the Yisraelis, of the Isha HaYisraelis, cursed Hashem, and the people sent him to prison until they were ultimately told to execute him and never to curse Hashem. Now, why does the Torah spend so much time on this storyline? Why do we need to know that there was a fight or that it took place in the Machaneh? Does the Torah need us to write the background with Mrs. Saltzman? And further, if the Torah is merely reporting all the news that's fit to print, why does it do so in such a shoddy job about telling us the who? While telling us about both fighters' familial backgrounds, the Torah never tells us who they were. Unless you think that this is due to a bad reporter, the Torah also tells us that the mother of the one who cursed was Shlomis Bas Divri. Why name her and not her child? And who was his adversary, this mysterious Ish HaYisraeli? Perhaps we might shed some light on our questions if we asked one more additional question. What exactly was supposed to be the takeaway from the story? If it was simply not to curse Hashem, then why does Hashem return to Moshe with this extended list of other seemingly unrelated mitzvos about not hitting or damaging animals or humans, about an eye for an eye, etc.? Why do these mitzvos and what do these mitzvos have to do with the sin of the guy who cursed? I think Mrs. Saltzman's message that evil doesn't occur in a vacuum might play a critical role here. Yes, it's true that the man cursed, but how and why did he do what he did? The Chizkuni tells us that he responded to the other man, who called him a mamzer, who called him an illegitimate seed, a less than member of society. Perhaps he had a reason to fight with the man who cursed. Indeed, the Zohar Kadosh points out that he was the son of Shlomis Bas Divri's husband from a different mother, and the men were in the midst of a land and inheritance dispute that depended on the legitimacy of the son of the Egyptian. But the mamzer name calling was too much. And for that, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh notes, the Israeli, he too is forever enshrined with responsibility for what occurred. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky adds that this is why the Torah adds all of the extra laws of damage in the takeaway section of the Parsha. Two people fought, Rav Yaakov notes. And there are responsibilities that both need to bear. Not only the one who committed the ultimate indiscretion, but the other side as well. He spoke. He kept the fight going. There were words, and perhaps even fisticuffs. And he too bears the responsibility. And the people need to know those rules as well. And so hence when speaking to Bnei Yisrael, Hashem includes the lessons that apply to him for them to learn from as well. But that's not the end of the list of the guilty. Remember where they fought. B'machaneh, in the camp. The Abarbanel points out that the two men didn't take their differences outside. They fought in the middle of the camp. And no one seemed to stop the escalation before it went too far. And in that regard, the fact that no one spoke up, that words eluded the crowd, made them also responsible in a certain way for what happened. You see, when words and fists fly freely, it's the responsibility of the onlookers not to stand by. How do they put it in the world of today's security? If you see something, say something. If we stand by silently, we're responsible when crime is perpetrated as well. We can't be okay, even with heightened verbal sparring. If we don't say something to stop it, we as a society are culpable when that rhetoric hits a high point. Yes, in these cases at the extreme, words can kill. And our Parsha notes that it certainly did. Maybe on a homiletical level, this is the lesson of the identification of the mother as Shlomis Bas Divri. The cause or the root of the episode began because Shlomis Bas Divri, because one can only be at peace, Shlomis, when Bas Divri, when we speak up about things that are not okay in our society and work to remove them and improve ourselves. Once again this week, we find ourselves facing the great challenges that emerge from the extreme rhetoric in our society. While it's clear to us that using words and labels like genocidal and pedophile and Nazi and Hitler to fly around in a daily discourse unchecked is wrong for us, and it cheapens the full impact of the atrocities committed during the Shoah, as well as the people who perpetrated them. But we tend to quiet ourselves around others who use such strong and wrong terminology about people whose opinions we disagree with. That too needs to be unacceptable in our society. We continuously see, and unfortunately have been victims of, those who get caught up in their crazed frenzy of fighting. Sometimes it's just name calling, but once again, we've seen it explode into violence and attempted murder. And even within our own people, our rhetoric has led to increased division and occasional violence between Jews as well. We need to stand up and find it unacceptable. When someone begins speaking viciously about another person, don't reward it with attention, with laughter or curiosity. Quietly redirect, change the subject, or excuse yourself. Many fights continue because they're fed by the listeners. Sometimes the holiest thing you can say is, let's talk about something else. When politics and family disputes or communal controversies become sharp, be among those who slow things down. At Kiddush, or in backyards, on WhatsApp chats, Simchas and Shabbos tables, don't normalize contemptuous speech. And if needed, say, we don't speak that way here, or let's keep it respectful, or that language is beneath us. After all, every home and every community has a climate. Someone sets it. Why not us? And while we're at it, if someone in the community is being mocked, marginalized, excluded, embarrassed, or gossiped about, strengthen them. A text, and by the way, better than a text, a call, a handshake, an invitation, or a kind word can undo enormous damage. The loudest voice in a conflict should not be the only voice that gets heard. Who, what, where, when, how, and why. Our Parsha teaches us to ask them again in a deeper way. Who's responsible? Not only the one who cursed or the one with whom he fought, but those who stood silent. What can we do? Interrupt cruelty, defend dignity, calm conflict. Where does it matter? In our homes, in our shuls, in our communities, in our chats, and on our tables. And when must we act? When? Early, before sparks become fires. Why? Because a holy people cannot allow ugliness to become normal. And how? One sentence, one refusal, one courageous act at a time. It's up to us to make those changes, and we can. And we can when we do it, one step at a time. Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom, and a Shabbat Shalom to all.